Remembering all the joy. So this is all stomach here. And if you look,
or cardiac?
Oh gosh, I remember. The one on top
Pyloric's, I think, the first one.
is pyloric, yeah. So this would be pyloric, all the crud that's sticking out here, and then cardiac's going to be the down around the mouth part. And I've kind of pulled it out a little bit because I wanted to get the stone canal, which see the madreporite there.
Yes.
And this thing is attached, or was attached, partially still attached maybe, to the madreporite. You can kind of see that there. So that little guy's a stone canal. Kind of want to leave this guy just in case that ends up being a question that's asked. So I'll probably, since you know it, no. But anyway, so we're just gonna have different stages of dissection there. So I'll have another one where I've cleaned it out more and you can see the ring canal. And this guy, these are, remember these lovely things going down into his arms? The digestive ceca or pyloric ceca, they're sometimes called. They're basically outpocketings of its stomach, and it's just what allows the nutrients that are taken in that get liquefied by the digestive system to be distributed throughout the body. They have their water vascular system, but their water vascular system is good for, of course, I mean, it's like their internal skeleton basically, and it moves their tube feet, and it also is good for distributing oxygen and stuff like that. But the food distribution, a lot of it is directly diffusing out of that digestive system into the surrounding tissues. So they don't really have the kind of circulatory system that vertebrates have, where they don't have blood vessels with blood that transports both nutrients and oxygen. They don't really have the kinds of respiratory pigments and stuff that more active animals need. So they actually just get what's dissolved in the water that's circulating through their water vascular system, and of course what's diffusing in through their digestive system and from their body surface. That seems to suffice for them as far as oxygen goes. But then starfish are slow movers. They don't run around, so they don't have the same activity level that animals like ourselves have. So let's see, let me do another leg so we can, and I'll take the pyloric ceca out and then we can see. The great thing about having 5 legs is you can do different things to different legs. They all have the same stuff in them, of course. The diagrams in textbooks sometimes confuse students because they will show one leg having one thing and another leg having another, but it's just a question of different dissections of different legs. Most animals were not so lucky.
What are those white things, the spiny things?
Oh, those are those, they're part of their, they're the dermal ossicles, some of them, the little spines that stick out. They've also got those little guys with the teeth. Now I'm drawing a complete blank on the name of those, but they're you don't really see them on these, but they're the pedicelaria. They are the little. I know you're good. You've been reviewing. Someone's been reviewing his echinoderms. Yeah, they have those little guys. I think the pedicularia is how they're pronounced. But they're the little guys that are on the surface. They're like little teethy things that are between these dermal ossicles. And what they do is they snip off algae and bacteria, things that are growing on the surface of the animal. Since when you don't move around really quickly, you know, it's like that rolling stone attracting no moss thing. Well, they do attract moss, or they attract algae, which is what you get when you're in the water. So things like that. So it keeps them cleaner. Okay, I'm going to remove the pyloric ceca here, and then you'll be able to see their ampullae and their ambulacral ridge. Unfortunately, the gonad in these animals is barely... See that little thing right there? That's its gonad. You can't even tell if it's a male or female at this stage of its life. If it were a reproductive female, you'd have a lot of roe or eggs filling this area sometimes, and then you can tell pretty easily it's a female. But when they're not in the reproductive season, they are dioecious, but you just don't see the difference between the male and female gonads very well. All right. It's not really roe, actually, to be fair. They're ova that are going to be expelled, and then they get fertilized by the eggs by the sperm externally. So they're not really quite the same as internal, you know, they get fertilized internally. So those are the gonads, those tiny little things right there. They're just not much to write home about, but I'll leave them there so if anybody wants them to use. That's the ambulacral ridge. These are the ampullae, those little bubbly things. And probably a question that would ask about this, for the ambulacral ridge, it would be pretty easy just to stick the pin right up there. But for the ampullae, which are the little bulbs, of course, that fill with water, and then, you know, they're they basically hold water for the water vascular system, and then expel it through the tube feet. Those guys are a little harder, so what we'd have to do is basically stick a pin probably through that part of it and kind of maybe call attention to the feature that we want by the way the question's worded. So definitely when you're reading these questions, read the wording carefully. Usually when we ask for you to name something that the pin's stuck in, we're just asking for the most obvious thing that the pin's stuck in, because of course if we stick it through the ampullae, it'll be sticking through the underlying tissue as well, but if we stick it over here, we're probably looking for the ampullae, so just be aware of that. The radial canal is really not something, it's underneath and inside that ambulacral ridge there, and it's not something you can really dissect out very easily. It's hard to really show, but if you look at this little leg that we've cut through, let's see if I can find the little hole. There is a little hole that runs, it's not very good, but you can kind of see it right in there. And it would be a hard thing to stick a pin in, I think. But it would be more a question that if we asked you about it, we might ask you, what is the name of the tube or something, or the channel for water that runs down the arm of each arm of the starfish or something like that. And then you could say it's a radial canal. And of course those come off the ring canal, which is underneath the stomach, which are connected to the stone canal, which is connected to the madrepore. So again, there's that little stone canal, which is darn hard to see. That's almost a good candidate for having a little string or something put under it to pull it out a little bit to see if we did that. Okay, so that's this seastar. And if you turn them over, this is the oral surface. The top of the seastar is the aboral surface, which is what I cut into. This is the mouth, obviously. And they do have an anus, but it's pretty rudimentary. And these guys, you could even say it's vestigial. It was functional when they were an embryo and they were swimming freely, but seastars most of them lose their anus, as far as my understanding is, as a functional orifice. And it's still just this tiny little thing that you really can't see the opening on the body surface, but it's still attached to this very short little intestine. This almost impossible, in my opinion, to make out, at least in a class at this level, with maybe if you had a really good magnifier and stuff and you really knew your sea stars, and some species more than others probably, you might be able to make it out as a little thread that's attached to the underside of the carapace. But the problem is when you cut this off and pull it off, it's hard not to break it. So that's something that is not, since they don't really use it, it's a vestigial intestine. And what they do actually, when they feed, they like have a scallop or something, and they have their little tube feet, which you can kind of see here. So little tube feet going into the ambulacral groove on the underside of the ambulacral ridge. They kind of partially extrude their stomach, and they use their tube feet to suck onto the shell of the mollusk or whatever, and they pull it apart, and they extrude their stomach into the animal, and they kind of turn it in digestive enzymes. They actually start secreting those, and so they start digesting externally, which is really weird for an animal to do. But then they pull the part of the stomach back in, and some of the juicified tissues of the animal they're digesting gets pulled in with it. And so they have the stomach has all these little protrusions off it, so they can kind of do that in part, and that way they're always pulling partially digested material in, and then they can extrude the stomach. And then when they're done, I get that wild-eyed instructor look. You don't have those little programs to make the high-pitched sound that I probably couldn't hear that you guys still could? One of my friends had that application in his iPhone, and we're all having fun this weekend when we got together, sitting around. This is what old people